We want to remove barriers here to getting your offer in the world. You might not know where your course business, your membership, your coaching business is going long term, but you have to have revenue to be able to invest and make things work. So getting started is always the best plan. Welcome to the Her First podcast, a platform to help online business owners, coaches, and creators gain the confidence needed to build a successful business while creating a sustainable lifestyle balance. We are here to help you prioritize yourself in business and life. I'm Joanna Newton.
And I'm Michelle Puolani. In this podcast, along with the Her First Collective, you can engage in the challenges women face in business, ways to increase your impact or income online, and how to make it all work while launching, scaling, or maintaining. Spoiler, it's not about perfectionism, hustling, or a copy-paste methodology. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of Her First. Today, Michelle and I are going to be talking about the one thing that all successful launches have. And I thought about this topic because I recently ran a really successful launch with a client and was thinking back to all of the launches I've done with clients this past year, all of the launches I did in my corporate career, and what really made the difference between a launch being successful and a launch being a failure. And the truth is, the answer might surprise you. But before I start talking about the one thing every successful launch needs to have, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you don't actually need to have a successful launch. Because I think a lot of times people think they have to be super crazy ready. Everything has to be in place before they start selling. And the truth is, that is not entirely true. Michelle, I'd love to hear from you. Are there things in your head that you think people think they need in order to have a successful launch?
Yes, definitely. I've seen this a lot too in working with clients and for myself in the past. I think that I have learned so many hard lessons when it comes to the digital space, launching products, programs, getting things out into the world, building an audience, and doing this work and being in this industry. The first thing that comes to mind is always aesthetics for me. I feel like people often think they have to have something that's really pretty in order to be successful, but something that looks good doesn't always convert to financial numbers, students, clients, whatever it is that you're looking to accomplish. And I worked with a client actually who had this same perception. They actually had a funnel that was working, converting, doing really well with their website. And then they were doing so well as a business that they actually invested a lot of money in rebranding, recreating their website. And it became so much more beautiful and so much more elegant. But it stopped converting the way that it was when it was just basic, plain, really simple, and what some would consider ugly. So I think that's the top thing that I think about when people think they need these things in launches is something that looks really good. I mean, obviously there should be professionalism. Obviously there should be cleanliness. Yes, there should be grammatical errors checked and things like that, but it doesn't have to be incredibly ornate or really beautiful in order to be successful.
Yeah, and of course, it always depends on the industry you're in too. And like connecting with your audience, the most modern, most perfect looking thing might not be what happens. One of the things that I talk to a lot when I'm on discovery calls or starting with clients is they think they need an entire website. So they come to me, they need help. They don't have web development background. They don't have copywriting design background. And they say, I want an entire website. But the truth is, like, websites don't sell. Like funnels sell, sales pages sell, things like that actually sell. A website isn't going to sell. And if you have limited budget on what you're going to create for an initial launch because you're not able to do it yourself or you don't have the time to do it yourself, starting with a full website, multi-pages, a blog, getting like that is such a big lift. Whereas getting up a freebie funnel that, is an opt-in page with a thank you page and a couple of emails designed to sell your course is a lot faster than setting up an entire website. So having a perfect brand aesthetic, I think that's sometimes things they think they need to sell. Having like an entire website, I think that's that category. You don't actually need an entire website in order to start selling. Fun fact, I did about $500,000 of sales with Millennial Marketer before we had a website. We found other ways to sell. Having the perfect course, offer, or product, this is one of those stopgaps I see for clients. Like, they think they have to have the perfect price point, the perfect offer with all of the right details and the perfect messaging. And I'm not saying you should not be thoughtful about those things, because you 100% should be thoughtful about those things. But if it stops you from launching, if it stops you from getting it out in the world, the actual best thing to solidify your offer is feedback, hearing people's reactions. And you don't get that if you don't actually put it out into the world.
Yeah, I'm a really big believer in this one actually, is launching an MVP, the minimum viable product, or even a concept. Now, I know there are some gray areas on this as we're seeing the payment plan and payment processing change as far as like what you can actually sell and market without a product or program in place. But if you have something that's tangible that you can just get out without creating, say, 6 months worth of a program or a year's worth of a program, and you can sell people on the idea, the offer, what it is that you're going to take them through, that's where I think people should often focus. So thinking about not just the perfect product, but also having a fully fledged product. A lot of people think, well, I don't have anything to sell yet. And I'm like, that's okay. That's the perfect place to almost start, because you don't know what that product or program is going to really look like until you start taking people through it. So people spend all of this time, all of this energy, all of these resources on creating this amazing, phenomenal, fully created, done project, and they haven't even sold or tested or aren't sure if that's the thing that's going to work with their audience and their market in the first place.
Yeah, another thing you don't need is a big ads budget. And it's for a lot of the reasons, Michelle, you were just talking about. When you're getting started, you're learning your messaging, you're learning your connection with your audience, you're perfecting your offers. Spending 10 grand on ads to send people to an untested funnel makes zero sense. It makes zero sense. And I'll tell you, across all of the clients I've worked for in the corporate world, when I worked in selling educational products, I never experience cold ad traffic with no other marketing plan selling courses. And one thing I think people fall into the trap with, they want to build a website, they want to build a funnel, they want to then send ads, cold ad traffic to a landing page and think that's going to sell for them. Now, I'm not saying it couldn't work. I'm saying I've worked with multiple corporate clients in corporate marketing and sales and with over 100 course creators, and I have never experienced that working personally. What does work is when you have an organic presence, when you are active online, when you have a funnel that has been tested and worked organically, then you take ads and scale that experience by getting more eyeballs with ads. That's when it works. Right? That's when the ad spend makes sense, when you have a funnel that's converting and you have another social presence, you have some sort of organic following, or you take the strategy of like retargeting ads. And if you don't know what retargeting ads are, there's multiple ways you can do it, but you're basically presenting ads to people who have already either seen your social posts, watched your videos, been to one of your landing page, already have some sort of knowledge of who you are. You're then finding them where they're spending their time and serving up an ad. So a lot of people want to just say, okay, I'm going to just spend money on ads. I will get sales. There will be an ROI. That isn't as easy or as common as you may think.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of clients just dump a ton of money in ads. I've dumped a ton of money in ads when it's kind of that only focus. It's not to say that it doesn't happen, because there are $100 million businesses that fully function on ads with additional influence points. Ads do work. We're not saying that they don't, but a lot of times if you don't have something that's tested, like Joanna's saying, if you don't have something that has demonstrated that it works, you can start with a smaller ad budget in order to test and really pay attention to the conversion metrics so that you can tweak, adjust, A/B test, compare, like do that through that process before you just start pumping money into something and say like, oh, well, it's just going to work because I'm putting money behind it, which is funny to say, but a lot of people think that if I just invest in this. I had a client recently who spent like $34,000 with an ads agency and got like $8,000 ROI on the programs that actually converted on the back end. Being mindful of where you're investing that capital is really important as you're getting started, and you just don't need it. The other thing is I like to think of the online space as a sphere of influence. You're almost creating a web or a network of some kind. And so with those companies that are successful with ads, it's typically in conjunction or alongside other organic efforts that they have, whether that's SEO, social media platforms, leveraging other people's audiences, public relations, other ways in which they're getting in front of people. So their audience is already engaging in these other organic ways. And then the ads are just solidifying, pushing to the actual call to action or to the sale. It works together. And when you're first getting started or when you're launching something, just going the ads route isn't always the most successful. You want to think of other places. Like I know there are some successful creators and business owners in the online space who, yes, they use ads alongside a launch, but the majority of their actual purchasing customers come from referrals. Starting to think about this a little bit differently when you're going into your launch model.
100%. The last thing I want to bring up, obviously, there's a lot of things that you don't need to have a successful launch. But the last thing we're going to talk about before we get into the number one thing, or I guess the one thing that all successful launches have, is the last thing you don't need that we're going to talk about is a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. No, don't get me wrong. I am a planner. I like planning. I like thinking down the long. I like thinking of the future. But again, we want to remove barriers here to getting your offer in the world. You might not know where your course business, your membership, your coaching business is going long term, but you have to have revenue to be able to invest and make things work. So getting started is always the best plan. Doing something, getting things out in the world, launching, getting your name out there. And you may change, you may morph. You actually should, I would say, right? Like you should change and morph and grow with what you do and what you offer as you get data and as you get reactions and as you see consumer need. When Brandon and I started Millennial Marketer, we were initially planning on launching with a membership. So we were working on content for a membership and all of these things. But we quickly realized that because we didn't have a business social presence, we didn't have a lot of things like ready right at that moment, that was going to be a longer road to revenue for us. So we started with done for you services because it was something we could pitch and get one person at a time and start building revenue. Now we're going back to the digital product world now that we have referrals and connections and we both had experience in this world, but experience as a company. That's what worked for us. And we pivoted pretty quickly because that's what made sense for us to do in that moment. So being agile is really important. So if you have you should have a vision for where you want to be in 5 years, but you don't need to know exactly every step of the way. This is Q1 of the first year, Q2, just have this idea of what you want in the long term, be building towards it, but being open to change in the early stages is so important.
I think having and holding the vision of where you would like to be is fabulous because it'll help you make decisions throughout your journey, right? Am I going to focus on this? Am I going to focus on this? Where am I going to invest my time? Where am I going to invest my resources? And that makes total sense. But investing all that time in the 5-year plan, the 10-year trajectory up front is not worth your time and energy right now, right? That's what Joanna's saying, it's not that it's not important. Just don't spend hours and hours and hours trying to fixate on this business plan or this projection of where you're supposed to be over time, because that will change, that will evolve. Getting into your core mission and values, like we've talked about on the podcast before, very important. The other thing to point out about what Joanna's talking about is she just essentially changed the business model to be geared toward paid market research. So she, at this point, understands what her clients need, what they're looking for, the systems, the processes in which she can now leverage for digital products or a membership as she heads into the product creation space. And the way that they did that was working one-to-one with clients, listening to them, hearing them, working through processes together so that now she understands them so much better that as they launch their digital presence, as they're creating brand awareness, as they're building out their website and growing their YouTube and doing all these things, they're actually speaking to the audience, the target client, the ideal persona in which they're trying to attract and draw in that will eventually be consumers of their products and programs. So keeping that in mind for yourself as well. If you don't have an audience right now, if you don't have a brand presence, putting all this time and energy into creating a product that you don't really know is going to be effective for your ideal client and that anyone is even going to purchase doesn't make any sense. I actually had someone recently ask me, how do you start a business? And the first question I asked them is, well, what type of business do you want to start? Because a business is not a business is not a business. And there's a lot of ways to make sales and there's a lot of ways to market and there's a lot of ways to grow, run, and have a business function. But you need to understand what type of business you're in, what you need to get and accomplish first in order to even launch the idea. And what I always try to encourage people to do in the beginning is to get someone to pay them for what it is that they're thinking about doing, whether that's a physical product, whether that's a service, whether that is coaching or consulting. Find someone who's willing to pay. Don't put all the time and energy into business formation or creating the website or getting the cards printed or whatever the case is. It's just like, just talk to people and see if it's an offer that's actually viable. And then you can go from there. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, stay on the soapbox. That's such a great point. And again, like the amount of business owners or people who want to be business owners that I talk to, you can see these sticking points people have. And these are some of the roadblocks I think that keeps people from launching and keeps people from being successful. They're waiting to have all of their ducks in a row before they go live with something. And I think it's so important to realize that the people who are really successful are the ones who go for it. And I'll tell you, there was a time in my life where, like, when I first started in the more startup world, when we would launch things before they were ready, it really gave me a lot of like anxiety and panic. Like, because I'm like, what if we can't deliver? And as an employee, that was really hard for me because I didn't necessarily have the control over the delivery, especially being in marketing, right? Like if I'm being asked to market something that's not done, it would make me nervous that it would not actually done because I didn't have control over that. Now, as the business owner, I'm much more comfortable selling something that, might be 80% ready because I know at the end of the day, it's my job to like make sure it's ready. And if it's not ready, it's my problem. I am the one who has to answer to myself for it not to be ready.
And that's such a great conversation around expectation because we think that we are held liable for so much. And, speaking to the more solopreneur, coach, content creator in the online digital space, is that we're like, okay, well, we have to have the fully beautiful built out course. We have to have the professional videos. We have to have this beautiful website because that's our landscape. That's our, brick and mortars have physical locations. We've talked about this before again on the podcast. And if you're enjoying this conversation, hit subscribe, listen, and tune in for more of these episodes talking all about business, how to prioritize yourself, how to grow, how to market, how to sell, which makes sense in the digital space. That's your brick and mortar. That's the presentation of your brand and your business. But if you set expectations the right way with your customers, clients, and prospective buyers, then you will be fine when it comes to the delivery or what it is that you are positioning as the offer. You don't want to lie and tell them that you're going to give them something you can't, because you are in control of your efforts, because you're in control of the product, the program, the delivery, you can just set the stage. They don't have to. I was working with someone recently on their membership and she just felt like, okay, well, I want them to have new content every single week. So I've got to film 10 modules and I've got to get all of those in the portal. And I'm like, you just brought in members to your membership. Like, just film as you go. Set the expectation from the beginning. Film a welcome video. That's the first step. Like, film a welcome video. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Here's what to expect. And then you get to outline when you're coaching, when you release modules, what type of content you're putting out. And you just take some of that pressure off because we put so much pressure on ourselves to deliver in a certain way that we forget that we're the ones who get to decide and dictate what that delivery looks like.
That was so perfectly said. And I hope that if you're listening and you just kind of heard us rattle off all of what you need, that maybe that makes you realize the barrier to entry to starting your business is a little less than you might think. Because you don't have to have everything figured out. You do not have to have everything finalized. And you can do some things to get started. And today, what we're going to do is talk about what everyone who wants to start a business should do. I would say if you can, like starting tomorrow. Because the one thing, all of the successful launches I've worked on, the one thing that they all have are real, genuine leads, an email list, people who are paying attention to them, who are talking to them. This list does not have to be huge. You do not need 100,000 people. If you had an email list of 500 genuine people who like you, fit your target audience, or who you reach, you can sell. You can. You might not sell a lot with 500, but you can sell. You can make sales at that level. And then as that leads list grows, you can sell more and more and more. But leads are the thing that are going to make your business work. And I'll tell you, I will talk to people who have been trying to sell and they've built websites and they've built funnels and they've built all of the things, but they don't have a leads list. They can't sell. I've also talked to people who are just getting started, but they have a leads list and they can sell right away. And that is the biggest difference maker when it comes to selling your digital products. Really, honestly, any products, physical products too. If you have leads, if you have eyeballs, if you have people who care about what you do, you can figure out how to sell. Now, maybe your first offer you send might not be a hit and you have to make adjustments, right? Like, I'm not saying you will 100% sell out of a membership, but you can sell if you have leads.
So I got started in fitness before I kind of transitioned to the online space, and I did a personal training program, and it was something that was actually in person with our local college. It was like an academic distinction thing. And later on, the instructor actually asked me to come back to talk about my career, what I was doing, and connect with the students who are now going through the program. And one of the things that I shared with them and the questions that they asked about being successful, creating a career, like where they're going to go, what the opportunities were, the one thing that I wanted to share with them and impress upon them is that start now and build a brand, build an audience. Yes, it's important and you can do this on social media, but of course, what Joanna's talking about is people who have converted to what we would call a lead because you have their email, you have their contact information, you have a way to get in touch with them that isn't owned by the social domain or somebody else. You own that contact information, you own that lead, you own that prospective customer. Not own, but you know what I mean. So I would just impress upon everyone in terms of like getting started as soon as you possibly can is building that personal brand. I think we have a great podcast on this in terms of building personal brands and thinking about how you can start to reach people, how you can get their attention, how you can build an audience. And even if you're a current business and you're thinking about launching a new offer, how can you create a segment of your list or of the people that you're already talking to that might be interested in this new offer? Because it's not always your entire audience that's going to be interested in this offer. How can you start to get people to opt in and say yes for this potential thing that you're going to be launching, what you're going to be presenting and offering them as far as your product, program, delivery, whatever that looks like. So leads are the people who are going to be interested in buying your things. And it's okay to have that on a social funnel because there are social funnels that are successful when you get people into the DMs and can convert them that way. But ultimately, you have some way of kind of capturing their attention, moving them to take an action, and then having some sort of like nurture or engagement piece. And I truly cannot impress upon you enough how much this was something that I did not pay attention to at the beginning stages of my business. Because when I started and I launched in the online space, I was totally sucked into all of the numbers, $100,000 launches, or you can make $10,000 a month, or you can do this, like all of those things without realizing that the people who are doing those numbers had already been doing it for quite some time and had also built an audience, built a list. They were launching to a different model, to a different setup than I was. And I just kept thinking like, oh, I have 200 followers. Like, how come I'm not reaching the same numbers? And I just didn't understand the concept of metrics at the time. And I didn't know my metrics and I wasn't paying attention to those. So I just thought that I was failing and that no one wanted my products and programs. But realistically, if I had launched in the same way, but to 10,000 people, 1,000 people, as opposed to 50 people, it changes everything. What Joanna's telling you is so, so important. Hear it, absorb it, learn it, and it will save you so much time, so much wasted effort, energy, and resources in your online business.
Yeah, and I'll share an example that can give you hope. So if your focus is on building leads, right? So you're starting your business as a side hustle, right? So you have a full-time job, you're doing this as a side hustle. You need to make income in order to move. So maybe you spend an entire year, you're just focused on getting leads, right? You're just going to get leads, grow your awareness, and get leads. And then you launch to those leads. And then you have a successful launch, which gives you income to run your business. And I recently ran a launch with a client, and which this launch actually kind of inspired this episode and got me thinking about this topic and wanting to share it with you because we launched a brand new course for them to a list of about 9,000 people. And as Michelle pointed out, this was a segment. They have a bigger leads list. The owner of the company is a lecturer, and she goes out and she lectures at colleges and conventions and things like that and collects leads that way, as well as through social media. So they actually have a pretty robust leads list. And that just goes to show there's lots of creative ways to get leads, right? She gets them through guest lecturing and that's how she gets her leads. So the leads list for this particular segment that was right for this product was about 9,000. And there's the key. We found the right segment, right? We didn't just blast it to everyone. We thought, this is the right product for this group of people. Let's send this to this 9,000. We invited them to an event, like a webinar, that was free, that was about the topic. People came to the webinar. We encouraged engagement in the webinar, had a great number of people. There were about 900 registered for the webinar. We left it open for them to watch for just a little bit after. And then we promoted the brand new course to all of those people. So 900 people registered for that webinar, and about 25% of them actually converted. So that led to about a $25,000 launch. So $25,000 in about 10 days of promotion. That's fantastic, right? And that's with a 9,000 person group of leads. Now, 9,000 is a lot, and that can sound like an overwhelming number, but it's not hundreds of thousands of people, right? We're not talking about having to get your entire audience's attention to make money. You can have a launch when you have people who know you, trust you, believe in you, and then convert in that way and give your business the money it needs to then develop more and create more. So these are real things that real people are doing, and also pointing out here that these people aren't social media influencers, right? I think sometimes we're like, I have to have 1 million followers to be successful. They have 700 YouTube subscribers. This is a reasonable thing a person who's really focused on their business can achieve. This is not like an outlier situation, right?
And this is someone who is focused more on the long-term success of their business and have been doing what they've been doing consistently, right? Showing up consistently, getting out there consistently, keeping and maintaining a presence, creating content on a regular basis. And they're not just coming in thinking that 4 weeks of a runway after they haven't been talking for so long, thinking they can just throw it out there and just make it happen. No, this was premeditated to a certain degree. I just watched The Hitman last night, so I'm thinking a little bit about murders, but there's some intention behind it, right? There's some thought. And the other piece of that is hearing 25% conversion rate is incredibly high of the people who opted into a webinar. I'm assuming the people who showed up and then the people who actually converted. That is very, very high. When you think of the industry standard, it's anywhere between 1% to 4% on an offer. But the reason that it is so high is because you have those genuine leads that are connected to what this person is doing. And I will say the other piece that I want to communicate to you is thinking about how you are connecting with people. What sort of language are you putting out there? I just heard this case study the other day that a woman is specifically in the dentistry space, and she helps people with codes like other dentists with an insurance code thing. I don't know all the details, but she started growing her digital product presence, and she was able to make her first sale with 8 people on her list. That's it. 8 people. And it was like a $39 product, just a small digital product. But when you were very clear and articulated with who you're speaking to, what it is that you can do for them, how you're solving that problem, and what they're going to get out of it, it doesn't take a large quantity, and it actually shouldn't take a large quantity. You should be so honed in on what you're doing as a small business owner. Now, again, like if you're at a very high level for some of the influencers that we see, Mel Robbins, Brendan Burchard, Alex Hermosi, like yada, yada, they're at a point of influence and reach that is just astronomical. We're not necessarily looking to accomplish those same things. So what we want to do is be more specific. We want to leverage our strengths by being small and being intentional and having the time to be able to invest in the messaging, the clarity of the offer, and what the transformation or outcome is going to be for that person when they invest with us, so that we can just beeline into what it is that people need and convert them at a much higher percentage point. That way you don't have to work as hard. It's a lot easier to reach 100 people than it is to reach 100,000 people. So if you can get higher metrics at the smaller scale, that's where the money is going to come from.
Yeah, and this is a bit of an aside, and I hope that this will give you who are listening some hope that you do not need to have some sort of huge social presence to have a successful business. I recently read an article that was talking about sort of the death of the influencer and like the money they're making, and that most social media influencers are only making something like $15,000 a year, even with like large followings, are not actually making money. And my business, Millennial Marketer, did $500,000 last year, and I have 3,000 TikTok followers. I am not an influencer. Like, you don't have to be an influencer to make sales. And we're going to kind of talk about the process of how you get leads and different ways and different tactics and different sales channels you could use. You don't necessarily have to be an influencer to make sales. You don't have to be an influencer to make a lot of money in your business as a traditional social media influencer. But you do have to get people's attention, and you do have to be in the rooms with the right people who need to work with you. And those can be two different things.
Very different things. And we are talking about having an organic sense of reach in some way, but that does not necessarily mean social media in a traditional sense. There are a lot of people who operate very high profit businesses through ads, through leveraging other people's audiences, through in-person events and networking, through referrals only. There are all of these ways in which you can get in front of people, not just social media, even though we like to talk about social media a lot on the platform. So keeping in mind that there's not just one way to get there, and you don't have to compromise or sacrifice your authenticity of how you market, how you grow, and how you garner leads.
100%. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit. I think we've convinced you that you need leads. And if you have leads, you can have a successful business and a successful launch. But now we need to talk about how you get leads, right? Like, how do you get an email list? And the first thing that you need to get leads is some sort of mechanism to capture those leads. And in the business, you'll hear the word funnel thrown around as a thing, right? A funnel is something that people talk about. And I think funnels are so funny. Before I was in like the digital space as like a corporate marketer, I just always like laughed and made fun of people for calling things funnels because they just make them sound way more complicated than they actually are. I'll break down a really simple funnel that we use at Millennial Marketer for people who are just trying to capture leads. They're not ready to sell. They don't have a product to sell. They just want to capture leads. What you need is some sort of high value, really great piece of information that people might want that's a good stepping stone to what you want to create. I worked for a company called Marco Learning. We did AP exam preparation, so advanced placement course preparation for high school students. And we had a couple of study guides. So a really great study guide that gave them information for that section of the test and what they needed to study. Great piece for us. We got when I was there, almost 100,000 leads through those study guides. So it's some sort of valuable piece of information that you're going to give away for free. This can be an ebook, a checklist, a guide. Think about what you want to sell long term and how you're going to position that later. You can sell to those people, but what does that target avatar want? So a study guide, a checklist, something that they can fill out. Maybe you're going to have a productivity course. Maybe you do a weekly planner, something like that people are going to want. You then need a opt-in page. You need a page to send people to that says, "This is my free guide. Give me your email, give me your name, and I will send you the free guide." After that, you want to send them to a page that says, "Thank you so much. You got my free guide. Go check your email. It's there." You want it in the email because you want them to open that first email, to train them to open your emails and get good open rates for your email. Especially if you're starting out, you want good email stats. Then you send them the guide in the email. "Thank you so much. So glad you're connecting with me. Here's my free guide." Tell them a little bit about yourself. Don't sell them anything. Don't ask them to do anything else. The next thing we do after in this particular funnel, because we're not selling anything, we are just building a community, we like to ask them a question. What is your number one problem when it comes to blank? Right? So say you're that example of that productivity coach. You're going to build a membership around helping people be productive. And you sent them a weekly planning sheet that they could use. You say to that person, "Hey, so glad that you downloaded my thing. I really hope it's helping you. I'm building a membership for people to help them be more productive in their everyday life. Can you fill out this quick survey?" And just ask them, what's your number one problem when it comes to productivity? Get them to talk to you. Get them to listen to you. Get them to tell you what to build. Then after that, you might want to send some more valuable information. If you have a Facebook group, ask them to join your Facebook group. If you have an Instagram, make sure they're following you on Instagram. You're just building community. Then when you have, maybe it's 100 people, maybe it's 500 people, you decide what that number is. You can go back to them and launch your course and say "Hey, you wanted a membership that gave you this. Guess what? Now it exists. I built it with you in mind." And you have wonderful, warm people to launch to, and having a mechanism to collect leads. Now, that's one example of a really great funnel. That's the one we build for people who are just looking to start building that leads list. There's other ways you can do it, but the key here is you need an opt-in page, you need something valuable, and you need a nurturing email sequence to bring them into your community.
And that's something you can build on over time. So I think going back to, sometimes people think they need every single step of the process before they actually launch and get started, when you really don't. You can actually just build that opt-in page, test it out, see if anyone's going to put their email and name in when you drive the traffic. You don't even need the thing that you're going to deliver on. And then once you do that, okay, then you maybe make the thing once someone actually sends you your email and then you send them something in return. You can do this manually in the beginning if it seems really daunting to try to put all the steps into place. A nurture sequence. You don't have to have all of those 10 nurture emails ready to go. I mean, like, yes, you can if you like that preparation, that strategy piece, but you can also do it one at a time. And when you have something valuable to say, you send it out organically, live, manually, and then you add it to the end of the nurture sequence. There's just kind of a methodical way that you can approach this so that you're not overwhelming yourself. And I will comment on the fact that, as Joanna mentioned, there are alternative ways to build your list and do it differently in terms of lead generation. And I want to comment on the fact that there are social strategies out there, right? With like ManyChat, or if people send you emails directly through the DMs and everything else. I will say both work great as far as collecting leads. There is one benefit to driving traffic to your website or to your pages, and that has to do with more tracking and being able to pay attention to the statistical data and metrics that come along with either Facebook pixel installation or Google Analytics, so that you can start to basically train and teach your business algorithm to find the people who are going to be interested in what you do. And then you can pay more attention to the data. Okay, 100 people landed on this page. Only 10 people opted in. I can increase that metric by growing the amount of people that are going to opt in. You can't necessarily track that as well, at least from what I'm familiar with. Maybe ManyChat has a way to track that statistical data. I'm not 100% sure. Say you send 100 DMs and 10 people actually opt in. Same thing, but kind of starting to understand the analytics, the data surrounding your efforts will help you improve them so that you can, again, tweak, A/B test. I spoke with someone recently and we talked about her opt-in page, and it was something that I think I kind of took for granted because I just assumed that was taken care of. And we looked at it recently and it was converting at 2%. And I was just like, why is your opt-in page converting at only 2%? And she's like, well, I don't know. I've never really checked into it. And I'm like, we don't have any problem down the line until we fix this one problem. Because if you have 100 people and only 2 people are opting into your page, then the positioning of whatever that valuable thing is that you are getting people to exchange, that name, that email, or whatever it is, it's not good enough. And so you need to change it, shift it, do something different, or position it differently so that you're going to increase that opt-in rate. And that can solve a lot of issues down the line. If you're like, I'm not getting enough sales, I'm like, okay, well, let's look back. Where do we start? Are your ads working? Are your organic channels working? Is your opt-in page working? Like, are you meeting industry standards or your own like internal business metrics? Are they being met? If not, something needs to be adjusted and changed.
And if you just listen to all of that and the understanding of metrics and stuff stressed you out, just keep in mind, you do not need to understand metrics to launch. Get the page out there. When you see the data, then it will make sense to you. So Michelle and I have both been doing this for a very, very long time, right? Like, we can look at metrics or a website and be like, that's the problem right there in like 30 seconds. You will get there. It's okay that you're not there yet. Or you can like hire someone like one of us and we can help you with that. The key here is you need something to capture leads. Another benefit of doing it on your website, this is maybe another like advanced strategy, like down the road strategy, you can do ads retargeting. So say you create the funnel that I described, you're giving away everything, you're not selling anything right away, and you do that for like 6 months. And then you launch a product based on those survey results. You can then go into Facebook, say, I want everyone who went to this page to get this ad. Like, that is a thing you can do if you've sent them to that page, right? So that you can do that. You could even more, make your targeting even more specific, do that to the thank you page. So it's only going to the people who opted in, right? And then you're really, really targeting ads. Or you could do different, I don't know. Now I'm getting too granular.
It's too
We
much.
could talk
It's
about that
too
in
much.
another
Yeah.
episode.
We'll have to
It's too
talk about
much.
this more because I feel like we have a lot to say about it. And if you're listening and you are feeling lost, reach out. I do a free strategy audit. I know that Joanna and Millennial Marketer have a lot of resources and tools. So ask us questions. You can find us on social media at the Michelle Poolani and at Joanna_@work. So find us, ask the question, take a screenshot of this, tag us, and we will reach out.
I get too excited. Like, I get too like, oh, we could do all these things. But I want to kind of reference, you need a way to collect leads. So it doesn't have to be what I described. It doesn't have to be exactly what Michelle described, but you need some sort of mechanism, some sort of system to collect email addresses and stay in contact with them. And I remember I mentioned earlier, Marco Learning, the company that got like 50,000, 100,000 leads with study guides. When I started with them, they were like about ready to launch. So I joined them about 2 weeks pre like public go live, and I'm there with them for 2 weeks, and they're like, we finished the website. Here it is, right? So I wasn't there when they made the website, but I'm clicking through the website and it's beautiful. The wording is great. The pictures are great, all of that. And I'm like, guys, there's no lead collection on this website. I'm not going to have anyone to launch to, and I have no way to make a leads list. So we very quickly added a mechanism to start getting leads. And a big thing in the test prep world for lead generation is practice tests. So we took some of the practice tests from the products that had already been created, because the products were created, the website was created, and there was no lead generation mechanism to collect email addresses, right? Like, and this is a company with like funding. Like, I'm like, how do I launch with no leads or ability to get leads? So we fixed that problem quickly.
It's always a surprise to me how large companies will miss certain pieces that seem so obvious when you are in this industry and in this business. Because even if you are very passionate about what you're doing, I was just listening to a podcast about this and it just makes so much sense. Is like you have to understand the industry that you are actually in. What is it that you really do? Do you generate leads? Do you create marketing and branding? Do you hire and employ people? Like, yes, your business is going to have a whole host of a lot of those things, but what is the biggest sticking point in your business and what are you actually doing? And you may be really passionate about fitness. I learned this the hard way. You may be really passionate about fitness. You may be really passionate about therapy. You may be really passionate about what it is that you do. But when you enter the online space, you are in the business of generating leads and making sales, like marketing and sales. That's what you are in the business of. You need to figure out reach. You need to figure out lead conversion. You need to figure out that aspect of business in order to be successful. Keeping in mind that as you grow your business, as you start, as you launch a new product or program, you need to keep in mind at the forefront, what is it that you are investing your time and energy into that's going to make the biggest difference? Yes, you want to be great at product and program delivery, but if no one sees, gets into, or actually goes through the product and program, it doesn't matter. Like, it really could be the best thing in the world, and you could be the absolute best and exceptional at what you do as a practitioner. If you cannot get people interested in it, then no one will ever know, and you're never going to be able to help anyone. So if you want to be able to help someone, you have to learn these skills or find the entities and agencies that you can trust in order to help you develop these skills in a really big way.
So now let's pretend for a second you're trying to launch your business. You've built your mechanism to collect leads, whatever that might be. Now, the big question of the day is, how do you get them? Right? So you've got the mechanism, you can collect leads, they're going somewhere, you're doing something with them. Now you have to get them. Because this is one of the things I see a lot, people are going like, well, the SEO will just do the work. And it won't. You can have the best copy, the best meta description, the best title, the best images. You can have all of those things. One, SEO is a long game. It takes a really long time to rank. And likely an opt-in page, something of that value, is not going to rank. So SEO isn't going to do it for you. I'll just like say it flat out there. You have to put in work to send people to that page. And so what I recommend people doing next at this stage is picking a sales channel. And I'll explain what that means in a minute, but I recommend picking one or two places that you are going to use to generate attention and drive traffic from. Now, that can be places like Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, your traditional sales channels. That can also be things like, I'm going to join Facebook groups and participate them. I'm going to do local lectures and talk at local lectures and share my freebie there. Millennial Marketer, we make, I don't know, probably a third of our sales through the Kajabi Expert Marketplace, which is a directory of people who do what I do, who help coaches and creators build funnels. I'm not on social media, but I'm highly ranked in there because of my projects and my reviews. I have a profile. People reach out to me. It's all inbound leads from me building my presence there. So there are lots of ways, but you want to think of one or two channels to start with that you're going to start building a presence and utilizing to get attention and to get eyeballs and to get people to know who you are. You can also do audience borrowing, which we've talked a lot about. Like you could look for affiliates and partners that you could say, hey, I have a free thing. Will you send this to your people? Different things you can do, but I want you to pick one or two places where you know your audience is, like your target person spends their time, and focus on that.
There are lots of really wonderful strategies, and I actually have a free guide for this 33 proven ways to drive traffic, and it actually has this big long bonus list too. And so there are long-term strategies and short-term strategies. Like Joanna was mentioning, SEO is more of a long-term strategy. It doesn't mean that it's not important. It just means that it's going to take you longer to see conversions and results versus ads, organic channels, borrowing people's audiences, right? Start to make a list or leverage the list that I've created for you that we're talking about here, that you can start to think about, okay, where am I going to place my time and attention? And I want to share a case study with you so you can start to think about this a little bit differently. I recently was introduced to a business owner who does a really great service, like build a brand in a day. So they do the entire brand building service for you, which comes to logo, color palette, what your whole brand personality is. Like they do all those things and they do the website stuff and they do the design. They have larger packages for bigger brands, but for smaller brands who just want to kind of get started, they have this build in a brand package. And then the only way that they reach new people and they actually make sales is through referrals. And they do this through a very specific model in which they launch every single month, but with one partner. So the partners that they've worked with will bring them in and position them in front of their audience. They get them to opt into a webinar and they position that value piece in the webinar. And then they present the offer of building a brand in a day. And then those people who convert from that person's audience, they get paid an affiliate commission or referral commission for basically having the lead generation model or the audience in place in order for the business owner to make the sale. So they don't do any organic marketing or any traditional channels on their own. They might sustain them so people look back at them, but that's not where they get their leads. It's not where they actually make sales. It's not where their customers come from. So you can think of this a little bit differently and start to consider the creative ways in which you can generate leads and drive traffic aren't necessarily traditional if you don't feel comfortable or if you don't feel like those traditional avenues really work for you at this time. So that's just kind of an alternative way to think creatively about how you're driving traffic and then capturing those leads and then converting them to customers.
100%, right on there. And I'll tell you from my experience working with people, finding my own customers, working in corporate, even social media can be a little bit of a longer game. I think SEO is the long game, and social media is in the middle. Unless your topic is super controversial, I think if you have a really polarizing topic, you can grow really fast on social, and get a lot of attention really quickly on social. But things like leveraging networking events and platforms like Upwork, Kajabi Expert Marketplace, or DM outreach on LinkedIn, or things like that, those types of activities can be a little bit faster. So if you're in a position where you're I need to make sales because I want to quit my job and I want to do this full time, doing that kind of approach, finding places to speak, doing in-person events, finding organizations that have your people and offering to do free trainings, doing direct message campaigns in LinkedIn, or starting an Upwork profile and doing done for you services. There's a lot of ways you can go about this, even if that's not your long-term, right? There's a lot of ways to build your audience because then you can start making money, and then maybe you start Instagram or YouTube or other things with the funds you have coming in because you have support and you have time and you can quit your full-time job or pull back on your full-time job or quit your part-time job that you were doing because this economy is horrible and most people need a full-time and a part-time job in order to pay their bills, right? You can think about this a little bit differently. And yes, growing on social is great, but I think sometimes some of these less traditional methods can actually get you to revenue faster.
I think we get in the trap of thinking that social media is lead generation. If you have a model that is set up that speaks to the person that you want to speak to, that captures their attention and that converts them, again, into that lead, into a buyer, whatever that model looks like for you. But I've spent a lot of time on social media and don't generate clients. I haven't nailed that yet. I'm working on it. I'm working on the messaging. I'm working on the offer. I'm working on that niche aspect of like speaking directly to that person. But the majority of my clients have come through referrals. And it's not a bad business model to leverage that. You can double down on it. You can increase referrals. You can really leverage that model in how you acquire customers. So again, what is working? What hasn't been working? Really deciding what that looks like for you, and then being a little bit more strategic or giving yourself time to test something, right? Say, okay, I'm going to go all in on this methodology for 3 months because I have that runway in terms of time and resources. But if it's not working in that 3-month period, what am I going to do then? Am I going to pivot? Am I going to adjust? But don't just try to keep doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same result and not doing anything different, because I've been there too. It's all cautionary tales today.
And that's the truth, right? Being successful and having a successful business and getting clients and getting sales, there's so much trial and error, right? You've got to put yourself out there. If you're just doing it alone in your head in a business plan on your computer, that's not actually a business yet, right? Like you have to be like doing the thing. And so like in our model example, let's go back to it for a minute. If you're sitting in this position and you've built your mechanism, you've picked your sales channels. So you've decided I'm going to do cold outreach on LinkedIn. So I'm going to post on LinkedIn, and then I'm also going to send DMs, and I'm going to also have an Instagram. So that's what you've decided. You've made that decision. That's the right for your avatar, who you see. You're going to start doing that. Now you actually have to start creating content, and it has to be strategic. Thinking about what you're going to post regularly on LinkedIn. Plan out what those cold direct message templates look like. Now, don't be too templated because people will tell, but have an idea for what's that strategy. How are you going to get eyeballs? How are you going to get attention? Make a plan and then actually execute it, right? Actually post it, actually do that. And that plan needs to include sending people to your free thing. And there's lots of ways to do this. You can use, we've talked about ManyChat. I don't think we need to get into those sort of tactics today, but you need to start posting, getting attention, sending your direct messages, talking directly to people, and sending them to that opt-in page or whatever that is that's going to collect their email address. So as we wrap up today, I do want to let you all know of a special offer that we have. A Millennial Marketer has launched a 10-day course creation challenge. And this challenge really breaks down and simplifies getting started with your course launch. You don't have to have every video ready. You don't have to have every little piece in place to get started. And one of the things that we've included in that product is that you will get a coming soon lead generation template that follows a really similar strategy that we've been talking about and I've been talking about as lead generation, where people can opt in because they're interested in learning about your product. So you will get templates that will work inside Kajabi that you can use to start building that lead generation mechanism. We will put the link to that course in the show notes so that you can check it out. The page is going to tell you everything that's in the course, what you get, but you're basically going to get one step each day that you can take for 10 days to get your course launched and ready for sale and start collecting leads in order to really launch that program.
We love that step-by-step breakdown because it gives you really manageable pieces that you can implement, especially if you're feeling a little lost or unsure what to do. So go ahead and check that out in the show notes. And if you're going to walk away with one thing from today's episode, it's to start thinking about how you're going to bring people into your world. And I want to end on this note because I feel like it's something that really crippled me for a long time, is believing in the value that I bring to the table and what I have to offer. So whatever you're either thinking about creating, you already are creating and in the process of selling or marketing or growing, or if you're considering, again, launching a new offer, a new product, a new program in the arsenal or the ascension model of what it is that you already do, I want you to find the full, wholehearted belief, intention, commitment to what it is that you do, the worthiness of what you bring, and the value of what you're providing. In order to do that, sometimes it really takes clarity of, again, the offer, the person that you're speaking to, and knowing that you really have a problem that you solve and that you do it well. So just finding that commitment within yourself, doubling down on it, knowing that this is something that's going to be incredibly valuable to the marketplace. And then all of the steps that you take as a part of that process will be imbued with that energy, that confidence, and you'll be able to execute so much more easily, so much better, and with longevity. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Find the link in the show notes to join us in the Her First Collective, a free Facebook group to discuss the podcast, ask questions of our guest experts, and network with a group of female entrepreneurs who value collaboration over competition.
Please subscribe, share, leave a review, and be sure to catch our next episode. What is one thing you can do today to prioritize you in business and life?